package expected to include Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, and picks. We all found out on Sunday, and so did Chris Paul apparently. Here he is on Good Morning America earlier today.
I was surprised too. I found out on the plane yesterday flying here for this. You know, in this league, anything can happen, so you just figure out what's next.
You literally found out on the plane.
Absolutely.
Wow. What was your first reaction?
Don't push him any further. He's trying to be nice about it.
Yeah, he is. Right?
Yeah. What's happening?
All right, now it's unlikely that Chris Paul will be suiting up for the Wizards. Woj reported that they are looking at a third team that would, send Chris Paul to a contender. Now, Ramona, what do you think the future is for Chris Paul?
I mean, I think that we end up with a buyout situation here in Washington, but you know what? He's been here before in Oklahoma City when they traded for him and he ended up playing that year with Oklahoma City. I think a lot of us were surprised that didn't end up in a buyout situation. I don't see anyone trading for him. I think that that market had been explored before this trade, and he has a $30 million contract. It's 15 of which is guaranteed. And so I think if it ends up in a buyout, I think it's up to Washington if they want to do that for him and what that even looks like. But I think Chris Paul has made it pretty clear. He either wants to win a championship and play for a contender or be closer to his family here in Los Angeles. Phoenix was pretty close, just a jet SweetX flight away. Los Angeles, they got two teams that would need a point guard. So if I was looking at both of them, I would say the Clippers would be more likely than the Lakers because of the fit issues. But there's an interesting clip going around, Chris Paul talking about Tyronn Lue and how much respect he has for him as a head coach.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a 5-hour drive from Washington, D.C. to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Chris Paul has never played in the Eastern Conference. And Ramona mentioned Oklahoma City. Do you remember that when Chris was playing for the Thunder, everybody thought he was going to ask out? Everybody thought he was going to be upset about it. And he was a consummate professional. He made that team better, and he willed them to much greater success than anybody ever expected. So Washington knows that. Like, Chris is such a gamer that he's not going to go there and just give up and walk away and stomp his feet based on what happened in Oklahoma City. But that being said, Ramon and I also know he's like L.A. through and through now. His two kids are there. His wife's there. To have that opportunity to not only have your kids close by, put Los Angeles on your chest for either city, but also get ingrained in the LA community in terms of television. With Bob Iger giving him some mentorship. I think being in LA is probably his number one choice, regardless to which team it is.
Perk, do any of these scenarios for CP3, do you see any of these kind of in your eyes of what you know about it? Is there one, do you think, that would be a best fit for him?
Well, just CP3 and I are the same age. So that means that his time is running out when it comes down to his basketball career. And there's no disrespect to him, but I think I know CP3 wants to win a title. And when I look at the two LA teams, he can't go wrong with either one. But if I had to pick one for him, it would actually be the Lakers. And I go back to when they won the championship in the bubble, and I look at what Rondo did for Anthony Davis. Rondo every single night got Anthony Davis 8 to 10 easy buckets. Hell, he even got LeBron James 6 to 8 easy points a night. So when I think about what CP3 and AD could do in the pick and roll, because everybody talk about the relationship with LeBron and CP3 and how close they are, and rightfully so. But I'm looking at how can you maximize and get the most out of Anthony Davis? And you do that by putting up one of the best to ever do it for his floor generals on the floor with him so you can make the game easy for AD. It's too many times that we have seen this past season that he have to work too hard to get buckets. Adding CP3 to this will help everybody on the Lakers get easier looks.
Now, Welcome to NBA Today, presented by Xfinity Mobile. I'm Richard Jefferson in from Malika Andrews. I'm fortunate to be joined by our senior writer, Ramona Shelburne. But unfortunately, Kendrick Perkins is here with that big smile on his face. Oh. We start with a developing story out of Golden State. Warriors forward Draymond Green is declining his $27 million option for next season and will become an unrestricted free agent. His agent, Chris Paul, of Clutch Sports, told ESPN senior insider Adrian Wojnarowski earlier today, Steve Kerr recently said during a Warriors exit interview that, quote, if Draymond Green is not back, we are not a championship contender. So we are now welcoming him in. Woj, where do the Warriors and Draymond Green go from here?
Richard, now that the Warriors, Draymond Green, they talk about a longer-term deal now that he's a free agent. Listen, I think the goal for both Draymond Green and the Warriors is to find a way to do a long-term deal together. Now, will Draymond Green want a 4-year deal? Are the Warriors going to try to see if they can get something done, maybe with a little bit more money in 3 years and keep some flexibility on their financial books? That's what a negotiation's about. But certainly, there's going to be great interest in Draymond Green around the league. But I think the teams that would interest him, and I think the teams who would be interested, are contending teams. And those are teams generally without cap space. So they would have to work a sign and trade with the Golden State Warriors. And that's where it can get dicey. Do the Warriors want to help a conference rival, a division rival, an NBA rival who they might have to face in the postseason with acquiring someone as indispensable to the Warriors as Draymond Green? I still think there is some confidence, not necessarily momentum, but a belief that these are two sides that ultimately will find a way toward a deal. But when you become a free agent, certainly, anything can happen. But certainly, I think there's motivation on both sides, Richard, to get an extension done and keep Draymond Green with the Warriors.
All right, that's interesting. Now, Woj, stick around because we have so much more to get to. It was a very busy weekend in the sports world. So we are now going to bring in Hall of Famer Mark Spears to join us, and unfortunately, Perk. So I'm going to start with you, Perk, just to get you out of the way. What was your initial reaction to finding out that Draymond declined his option?
It wasn't a surprise. I feel like this is the perfect timing when it comes down to Draymond. I also feel like this is going to be his last big contract, should I say. And if I'm the Warriors, I'm doing everything in my power to come to terms and get Draymond re-signed to a new contract. Because here's the thing. Outside of Steph Curry, Draymond Green is the most important player on the Warriors team. Steph and then Draymond. And then it's everybody else. When it comes to being one of the best defensive players to ever play the game of basketball, that's Draymond Green. When it comes to being the heart and soul of that Warriors team, that's Draymond Green. Now I can understand some people now, quote unquote, will want to question his professionalism because of the incident with Jordan Poole. But Draymond Green is the ultimate professional. He never shies away from the media. He's always available. He's always ready. Every single year he makes the adjustments to his game that he needs in order for his team to win. And basically him and Steph Curry are itch and scratch when it comes to mastering the game along how to play along each side of each other. So if I'm the Warriors, I do everything in my power so that Draymond Green don't entertain or even think about leaving. I get this done ASAP.
Mark, what do you think is next for Draymond?
Well, I talked to him after the last game, and here was this quote that he gave me that really stood out. He said, I've been here 11 years. You don't just up and change that. The guys I started with are still here. Of course, I'd love to be here, but I do understand that this is a business. But, the thing in the beginning, I've been here 11 years. You don't just change that. I think that carries a lot of weight, playing with Steph and Clay his whole career. And he has enough former teammates that are around the league that tell him how different it is in other places, that the bread's not buttered quite as nice as it often is in San Francisco for the Warriors. So he's certainly going to sit with Rich Paul and I know Bob Myers' departure certainly hurts him. Bob Myers is not just a great coworker to him. He was a close friend. But Mike Dunleavy Jr. has already talked to Draymond. He said in his press conference today he was committed to getting him back. And I know Joe Lacob is also sounds like he's committed to doing what it takes to get Draymond there as well. So my expectations is that he's still in San Francisco and perhaps finishes his career with Golden State as well.
Yeah, I actually think it's a good thing that he declined his player option. That's a good sign for the Warriors because it shows that if he is back, they probably have worked on a sort of maybe a team-friendly contract. But anything could happen when somebody declines a player option. Draymond is the kind of veteran that a lot of teams would like to have on their team. Now, as Woj mentioned, any contender that he would want to join or somebody might want to recruit him is going to probably be pretty full salary cap-wise, and it'd be hard to have the space to sign him, and then they'd have to work on a sign and trade. Hard to get done. But what about a young team like Detroit? He's from Michigan, right? Those are the kind of things that you worry about if you're the Warriors because he is now a free agent. But as Mark said, my sense is he wants to be there. They want him back. The only question is, can they work out a team-friendly contract that can help him stay with the Warriors and to keep the whole group together? That's going to be the challenge Mike Dunleavy Jr. has as he builds this team going forward.
Well, it's a difficult challenge, but also don't forget.
Can I add this real quick?
Yeah.
Can I add this real
Go ahead,
quick?
Mark.
Tony Parker, I remember when he departed from San Antonio, when he went to Charlotte, he signed a 2-year deal. And then that was in large part for coming off the bench behind DeJounte Murray. I don't think he was comfortable doing that. He was more comfortable doing it for Michael Jordan in Charlotte. But I remember when he went there, going there and not making the playoffs and not feeling like he had a team that had a chance to win anything, crushed him. So after that first year, he retired and walked away from another year. So I think it would be really hard for Draymond to do like Tony Parker did and get disappointed in going to another franchise that doesn't have the opportunity to think that they could win a championship.
No, that makes sense. Well, don't forget, the Golden State Warriors did pull off a sign and trade when Kevin Durant left to go to Brooklyn, and they were able to get some assets back, which ended up turning it into Wiggins and some talented players. So I wouldn't count the Warriors or Draymond Green out quite yet. But shifting to what was the news of the weekend, the Washington Wizards are finalizing a trade to send 3-time All-Star guard Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns for a package that's expected to include Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, several second-round picks, and a pick swap. Our senior insider, Adrian Wojnarowski, reported on Sunday that the deal could take a few more days to be completed, but Beal is on his way to the Suns to form a new Big Three with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. We now welcome back the man that broke the news, Woj. So how exactly did this trade come together?
Richard, once Michael Winger, the new president in Washington, and Bradley Beal, his agent Mark Bartelstein, started talking about what a future looked like with the Wizards, and it was clear that Winger did not see a pathway to contending with this roster or with any roster that could be put together in the next year or two. It was clear to Bradley Beal that it was time after 11 years to look elsewhere and find a trade. They worked together, and there was no team more aggressive, I'm told, than the Suns in trying to acquire Bradley Beal, and I think none more willing to take on the $200 million plus left on the final 4 years of his contract. And I think for Washington, getting that contract off the books, not having to take on any future money, then the second-round picks, certainly pick swaps, and the draft capital. Again, Bradley Beal having the no-trade clause played certainly a significant role in what the marketplace looked like. He didn't have to go anywhere he didn't want to, but there were not a lot of teams who were really aggressive in offering up deals that were better than Washington's and willing to take on the rest of Beal's contract. And I think a huge part of that is the new collective bargaining agreement, the new salary cap, and how that's going to play out here over the next few years.
All right, so we know that Beal will end up a Sun, but that also puts Chris Paul. Do you think that Chris Paul will start the season with the Washington Wizards?
Well, the Wizards are leaving this deal open-ended here for at least perhaps another 24, 48, 72 hours, however long that they feel like there might be any traction in finding a third team to move Chris Paul onto a contender. Is there somebody out there who would throw the Wizards, perhaps a couple expiring contracts to match up with Chris Paul's money and a draft asset. And that is going to be difficult at 38 years old for anybody to really give anything up for Chris Paul. And I think teams like the Clippers and Lakers want to wait until he's in free agency if he gets a buyout. But listen, don't absolutely rule out the possibility that the Wizards might want Chris Paul to play point guard for them this season. I don't think that can be ruled out, but I think that's a conversation that's going to take place at some point here between Chris Paul, his agents, and the Wizards about what that would all look like. I think in the end, there's probably going to be a pathway to some kind of contract buyout, but the Wizards have him under contract. They have him under contract for the season. And so if they don't find a trade here in the next few days, perhaps it could get interesting.
All right. Well, thank you, Woj. We know this could get very interesting. I can't imagine Chris Paul in a Washington Wizards jersey. But here are the salaries that the Suns have committed to their big three. They have Kevin Durant for 3 more years, Bradley Beal for 4 more years, and Devin Booker for 5 more years. They have over $620 million tied up in these 3 players. Good for them. All right. We're back with our full panel. Perk, do you think that Bradley Beal was the right guy to go all in for?
Yes. We're talking about a guy that just a little over 2 years ago was averaged 30 twice in the NBA season. Here's the thing. I know right now they're top heavy, but when it comes down to having 3 of the most prolific scorers on one team, that's what the Phoenix Suns have. And I think the one thing that we don't look at when it comes down to Bradley Beal is his ability to play make. He's an underrated playmaker in this game. So he could play off the ball. You could put him on the ball. His decision-making is on point. He has a very high IQ. And we've seen Kevin Durant slide to the point forward position, and we never could question how he could make others around him better. This past postseason, we watched Devin Booker take a leap in growth in his PG skills when Chris Paul went out. I think this was a great move for the Phoenix Suns, and they're not done yet. This is just the start, but it's a hell of a start. And also, I'm going to end on this. They should be the favorites of winning the Western Conference. With those 3 guys, they should be the favorite, period. Let's not overthink this.
Mark, do you agree with Perk?
RJ,
Mark?
believe it or not, man, I covered a young, skinny Perk in Boston. And in 2007-08, Perk played with a really great big 3 with KG, Ray, and Paul. That's something I think that this group needs to look at. But let's forget about OKC and Kevin's time in Brooklyn. I think the thing that Kevin really needs to push on this team is to play like he did when he was with the Warriors. You know, KD averaged 26, Clay averaged 21, and Steph averaged 27 in that last year there. So in that team in Boston, as you see right there, they were able to figure it out collectively. There was no egos. They're trying to win a championship. But Kevin Durant knows the blueprint to win, knows the blueprint to unselfishness and how to find each other's shots. And those 3 guys together, man, they're going to get the easiest shots of their life, just like Kevin did with the Warriors. So I think that's the blueprint that helps the Suns.
I mean, did we just not learn anything by watching the Denver Nuggets the last 2 months? They have a team. The Denver Nuggets.
Who's the third? Who's the number 3 guy?
You don't need to have 3 stars. You need to have a team. You have a whole squad. Yeah. And the Denver Nuggets beat the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs with basically this construction, and now you swap Brad Beal in there. I think that's great. I think he is a good fit. He's going to space the floor for them because I think one of the issues that, like, Book and KD had a great 2-man game going. They had a lot of space around them. DeAndre Ayton is, look, they're going to have to figure out what to do with him, and he's going to have to figure out how he fits into this if he does stay in Phoenix. But the Denver Nuggets just showed us what happens when you build a team through the draft, all the way up and down the lineup. You have complementary players like Aaron Gordon. okay, we're just gonna do
Now-
the three stars again. But there's no depth. And here's the thing with this new CBA, it is so hard to add to a team when you're this far over what's going to be called the second apron. And let's stop. I know we're going to call it that, but it's a hard cap. And they just saw the hard cap and they're like, we're not going to go a little over it. We're just going to go blow past it. We're going to just go way so far over it that it doesn't even exist. Maybe there'll be a third apron for them because they're so far over it they'll never get back under it. And I think everybody who's on that current team is going to have to stay because they will not be able to replace anybody or make any moves going forward.
Look, I'm not going to say that we've never seen this before, but this is a very unique situation. They have a brand new head coach. They don't have a system in place. Kevin Durant just got there 6 months ago. This is not what happened with the Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors had a coach, had a system, had everything in place, but we're going to talk so much more about this
all
because
summer long.
I think me and Perk are going to argue a bunch. But still to come on NBA Today, hush your mouth. The biggest question mark of the draft is who the Welcome back to NBA Today. I'm Richard Jefferson, filling in for Malika Andrews. I am now joined with our senior NBA insider, Woj. Woj, can you tell us about the workouts that the Hornets are having with Alabama's Brandon Miller and G League Ignite Scoot Henderson?
Right, Richard. So I'm told the Hornets brought both players back for second workouts, second interviews today. Both had been in individually. This time, the Charlotte's outgoing owner, Michael Jordan, is in the workouts. He's in the meetings. He's in town this week. Now, he will continue to oversee the organization until his sale to a group led by Gabe Plotnick and Rick Schnall. Until that's finalized, that probably won't be until at least sometime in July. They're going to have to get approved by the league's board of governors. So Michael Jordan is still in charge. Mitch Kupchak, their general manager, certainly in Charlotte. Now, I think Brandon Miller has been the favorite at this spot, I think, throughout the process. Scoot Henderson had a very good workout with the Hornets recently, so they bring them both back in. I still think Brandon Miller's name is in pencil in that number 2 spot, maybe not quite in pen yet, and then see where it lands after today's workouts. I think certainly most around the league value Brandon Miller in that as the number 2 prospect in this draft, certainly. And I think that may very well be how this plays out by Thursday. But they're both back in today. They're both working out. Brandon Miller did not have as stellar of a workout with the organization as Henderson did. But you are judging a draft pick and making a selection on a lot broader body of work than 1 or 2 workouts.
Yeah, wings are extremely coveted right now. And look, the Hornets have a major decision with that number 2 pick, Woj. But what are you hearing about the Blazers' plan with that number 3 pick in the Thursday NBA draft?
Well, if the Blazers keep that pick at 3, they're going to take, I think, very likely whichever player Charlotte doesn't. And certainly, they're prepared in Portland to draft Scoot Henderson if indeed Brandon Miller stays in that number 2 slot. But listen, this is an organization in Portland that is very engaged around the league in seeing if they can turn that number 3 pick and perhaps other assets into, I think, a star-level player to pair with Damian Lillard. But it is going to take a tremendous package to get Portland to trade out of number 3 and to trade out of possibly a young player in Scoot Henderson who has all-star potential. This is the time of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, leading into the draft, when teams will get more serious about what they might be willing to offer. There's often a lot of dancing around leading up to it. But I think Portland may get a better sense here in the coming days if there's a deal out there that would give them pause, make them really consider moving out of 3, bringing in a veteran or more than one player for that pick. But it's going to have to be a deal that blows them away because this is a draft and a spot at number 3 where the Blazers have to get quality, they have to get value, and right now I think they're still penciling themselves in with Scoot Henderson if indeed he's there at 3.
All right, thank you, Woj. All right, we're back now. We're Ramona Shelburne, Mark Spears, and Big Perk. Ramona, because you're sitting next to me, we are going to start with you. What do you think the Hornets should do with that number 2 pick?
I think you draft the player who has the most talent and don't worry about the fit, okay? There's this sense of, like, you have LaMelo Ball. Do you want Scoot Henderson to play with him? And then you look at Brandon Miller. He's really good at things that players in the NBA who've been in the NBA 10 years are not good at. He's great in the pick and roll. He can shoot at 6'9". Like, he's a great fit next to LaMelo Ball. But Woj just said something very interesting, my ears perked up when he said that. He said they brought Scoot back, and he was very impressive in his workout, and maybe Brandon Miller's workout wasn't as impressive. Now, what does that mean? That you obviously view things through a long lens. It's not just one workout that matters. But if you look at Scoot Henderson and he's the guy that you think is the most generational talent in this draft, then you draft him. And I think people get caught up in positional fits and who's on your current roster a little too often in the draft, and they regret it later.
No, that makes sense. Mark, we're going to switch a little bit over to Dame. What do you think that this pick is going to affect the Dame Lillard situation in Portland?
Well, Dame's been the ultimate professional in Portland. He's working out there every day, and he also is at the draft workouts as well, which is quite interesting. So if there was anything that Dame was showing to leave, he's not doing it. He's got the Blazer uniform on, and until they trade him, he's going to be committed to it. And you got to remember, he has a lot of family members that are also in Portland as well, very, very well entrenched in this city. So he's also got a relationship with Chauncey Billups. It's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So, yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible and that Dame could be leaving Portland, but until that day happens, he is being ultra committed to that franchise. He's there all the time. If you thought he wanted out, you certainly couldn't tell by his actions out there in Portland right now.
Yeah, the next couple of weeks are going to be interesting. We got the draft, we got free agency, a lot of names, a lot of picks are up. But still to come on NBA Today, what is next for CP3?